76 stories about ghosts and witches and grave robbers and the undead in New Hampshire. 76 original stories written over a dozen or so years and presented each Halloween. New Hampshire may be the most haunted place in the entire country. And tonight, to continue the tradition, I have created new tales of New Hampshire horror. I'd say fasten your seatbelts, but I note that your seatbelt seems to be rotting and has been eaten by rats. So your seatbelt will do you no good tonight. Hold on tight to your steering wheel, if you dare. We shouldn't have been there. We were trespassing. But of course, that was the whole point, the danger. The old man himself, Mr. Sallow, was dead now, and we were in his backyard shining a flashlight into his cellar window. It was after midnight. With me that night were my pals, Eddie Trotman and Frank Singer, Willie Lucy. We were all 13 years old. Now that the old man was dead, we were going to sneak into his house and see stuff. Asher Sallow, the old man, had been, we all knew, dangerous. He was, most people agreed, mad. White hair, clothes that were rags almost. When he was younger, Mr. Sallow made his living as a taxidermist. He stuffed animals, birds, beaver, deer heads, well, you know. His house was filled with dead animals. We kids used to look in the window, see the menagerie. The place was also filled with trash. He used to hunt with this old .22 caliber Remington single shot, little tiny bullets, shorts. Smallest, cheapest bullets you could get. Killed rabbits, squirrels, porcupines, moles, dressed them out, and ate them, sometimes in a stew. I remember looking in his window when he was cooking. He had birds too, and roadkill. Asher Sallow was nothing if not frugal. He also canned stuff, vegetables in the fall, put stuff away in ball canning jars. Looking into the cellar, we saw shelves loaded with jars of canned vegetable and meat. Well, we pulled on the window and out it came, and in we went, scared to death. The cellar had a dirt floor, old rock walls. It smelled musty and wet. We went right over to the jars on the shelves. Tomato, zucchini, corn, some kind of soup, vegetable, chicken maybe. Eddie Trotman took down a jar containing some brownish gray glop, and he shined his flashlight on the glass, and he looked closer. "What's this?" he said. "Ah," and he moaned. And then he began screaming in terror. "No," he said. "No, no, no, no! Look, there in the meat. That's my grandmother's wedding ring. It is. She was buried with it." And he threw the jar back on the shelf, and all of us commenced screaming as well. And we all ran to the window, and we fought each other to see who could get out first. And we ran down the road until we got to Billy Singer's house, and we all piled into the kitchen, where we sat at the table and shivered. We sat a while. And then Willie said, "Eddie, how'd you know that was your grandmother's wedding ring?" Eddie smiled. "I didn't," he said. "I made it up." "No, you didn't," I said. "We all saw the ring. You showed it to us." "No, I didn't. You just thought you saw it. You want proof? Let's go back. I'll show you." "Nah," I said, and Willie and Frankie all said, "Nah," right at the same time. "Nah." And then we sat and sat. And then Frankie said, "Well, I'll give you credit." He said, "That was a good one, Eddie." This is a true story. It really happened. 18 years ago, Laura and I purchased this 200-year-old house here in Ackworth, New Hampshire. It's called Brick Ends. The oldest part was built in 1795. The newer, fancier front of the house was put up in 1800. A lot of people warned us the place was haunted, which of course was silly. Still, there are ghosts, as in all Houses, old ones, bits of old wallpaper, shards of pottery, initials carved in beams, foundations where the barn or the shed once stood. This is a portrait of the guy who put the fancy front on the house. His name is Lemuel Lincoln. He was a tanner and a prosperous man when he died. The house went to his daughter Sarah, who married a guy named William Prentice Jr., and their fourth son, Willie, was gut shot at Petersburg and died in terrible agony. His body is interred in the cemetery just down the hill from Brickends. Family never got over his death. It is the ghost of Willie that people say haunts this place. But Laura and I are not believers in ghosts still. One night in December of 2003, Laura and I were here sleeping on the futon on the floor in the parlor. We were at the time living in Portsmouth, coming over on weekends to work on the place. The carpenters had torn out walls and floors and ceilings. The place was a mess of sawdust and chaos. It was cold and it was spooky. About 2 o'clock in the morning, we were awakened from a deep sleep by the most awful crash. Just 2 rooms away. Came sitting right up. And we heard voices. Some people were in the house. They were talking in low voices. We listened. We couldn't decipher the words. I got to tell you, there was snow on the ground. Anybody who might break into the house would have to come in for the warmth, perhaps, but not to steal anything because there'd be tracks in the snow. And both of us had the same thought. Was this a dream? And we whispered that to each other. Is this a dream? And then we actually pinched each other hard. It was not a dream. So we got up, and I took a hammer from the toolbox there in the room, and Laura took a crowbar, and we pushed open the door into the next room. The conversation was coming from the room beyond, a small room where the carpenters had stored their equipment and supplies, paint, nails, screws, sawhorses, that kind of stuff. We purposely did not turn on any lights. However, there was a quarter moon, so we could see some things. The door to the small room was open. We tiptoed over to look in. "Hello? Who's in there?" we asked. No answer, and so we went in. Little room was a mess. A bucket full of drywall compound was on its side in the middle of the room. It had fallen from a pile of stuff near the window. I say a mess, terrible. And there on the windowsill, next to where the pile used to be, was a radio, and it was playing New Hampshire Public Radio. An interview with, I can't remember with whom. So here's what happened. The pile was top heavy. It finally had toppled over. Something in the pile of stuff hit the power button on the radio when it passed by and turned it on. And that was it. Geez, did we feel silly. It wasn't the ghost of the Civil War soldier after all. It was Laura Conoy. So we were drinking beer at the old Brass Rail restaurant in Manchester. I don't know if you remember it. It was Larry Farrell, Cindy Crank, Bobby Singy, Brenda, Lear, myself and my dates, Sandy Frank. The Brass Rail was located on Central Street. It faced onto Merrimack Common. This was back before the Hillsborough Courthouse was built. In 1957, the Brass Rail was the most disreputable drinking establishment in town. Cheap beer and danger. What more could a young man or young woman ask for? But you know, the most unique thing in the Brass Rail was this diorama music player. It was not a jukebox. The Brass Rail had a jukebox as well, and it was usually playing Hank Williams records. I didn't know God made honky-tonk angels. No, this music player was a glass case about 3 feet wide, about 2 feet high, and inside the case was this miniature band. Automated dolls that would play horns and violins and drums and piano for a nickel. kind of piano roll would move and make a sort of music box sound, and the musicians would move as if they were playing the instruments. If you're as old as I am, I bet you remember that diorama. Most of the patrons in the brass rail didn't like the sound of the music box. Somebody put a nickel in, they'd boo. And most nights the machine was unplugged. Drunks, it turns out, don't like dolls playing music. Anyhow, this Friday night we were at a table beneath the diorama, and of course it took my attention. I put a nickel in and the thing started up, and then there was booing in the restaurant, but the jukebox was a lot louder, and so people went back to talking and drinking. But I was half in the bag, and like a little girl in a dollhouse, my mind went inside the glass, and I sat there in the ensemble. Up close, the band looked almost real. Every one of the figures moved in some way. The clarinet player, for instance, simply bowed forward and back. Pianist's hands went up and down. The drummer was the most complicated. And it was all synchronized with the music. And the music they played was the Toreador song from Carmen. Figures all had personalities. They were hand-carved, and the carver used the faces of actual people. My eyesight was perfect that evening. I saw every piece of paint where it was worn through, every piece of dust on the figures. I even noted the fingernails on the piano player. And I floated into a kind of a trance. And then there I was, in a seat in the orchestra with my trombone, jerking back and forth as the slide went in and out, in and out. And beside me was a carved figure of a banjo player, strumming, and I caught his eyes, and they were filled with terror as he jerked back and forth in his seat and strummed his instrument. And then a shadow fell on the entire orchestra. I looked at the glass, and Sandy, my date that evening, Sandy was peering through the glass and looking straight at me. "Oh, look," she said, "the trombone player, he looks just like Fritz." "It is Fritz. Oh, this is too funny." And then she looked over her shoulder. "Where is Fritz?" "I don't know," Bobby said. "I guess he went to the restroom." "Hey, the trombone player does look like him. Wait till he gets back. This'll be a hoot." With all my being, I wanted to signal my friends that it was me, but I couldn't move. It was like I had a stroke. I could see, I could hear, but I could not move. And my friends were now looking at me through the glass. Their faces were huge. I could see the pores in their nose and the individual eyelashes. Every blemish, every broken blood vessel. They were monsters. "Hey, look," Brenda said. "The one that looks like Fritz. He looks like he's crying." "Whoa, that's weird." And then Larry put another nickel in the machine, and we got to playing Way Down Yonder in New Orleans, and the guys went to the restroom to find me, of course, and no one could figure out what was happening. And the group got angry. They were angry that I had left and had never said where I was going. The party was not fun anymore, and it was Fritz's fault. And as my friends went home, I was silently screaming. A couple of days later, I saw through the glass a couple of uniformed Manchester police officers at the bar. It was during the day, so I guessed they were looking for me. And there I was on the wall for 3 more years. And then the bar closed, and the diorama was taken to auction. And then we were under a tarpaulin in a warehouse. I don't know for how long. It might have been a year. It might have been as much as 10 years. And then in the living room of a collector in California, I think an old couple. We used to give concerts at parties. And now I'm looking through the glass that the room we are now stored in is some kind of barn or shed. We have been here a long time. And now, oh my God, what am I seeing? There is a fire. The whole end of the room is on fire. And there's no one here. Oh, what is this? Oh, I'm moving. A nickel's been put in the slot. We are going to play. We are going to play. Oh God, the song. We are playing Nearer, My God, to Thee. Bring your camera and bring your plasma scope and get over here to the Sawyer West Cemetery, Bert, and do it fast because the snow is melting. My friend Binky Sears was sitting in his Toyota pickup truck on the phone with Bert Flodkin, Sawyer's most noted ghost hunter. Bert's been written up in New Hampshire Magazine, featured on Channel 9 because he claims he can actually tell when ghosts are abroad, and this was Halloween morning. And Binky had something earth-shattering to show him, something so strange and spooky it would require a professional to authenticate it. Now, the story occurred back in 2014. You may remember there was snow on Halloween that year. 3 inches, in fact. But of course, as Binky said, it was melting fast. Anyhow, it was less than 5 minutes, and Bert's Chrysler K car pulled up beside Binky's truck there at the entrance to the cemetery. "What you got, Bert?" Bert asked. "Just look," and Bert did. "What am I looking at?" "You are looking at 2 sets of footprints in the snow coming down from the door of the Grimley Mausoleum there on the hillside." And sure enough, there were 2 sets of footprints walking side by side. The heel and toe marks showed them coming down the hill. But there were no prints going up the hill, and no prints coming down the hill to the tomb. Whoever made the tracks had come from the mausoleum itself. Out the door, there was no other answer. The other thing was that one of the tracks showed that whoever made them had a left leg that dragged a little bit in the snow. Well, Bert Flodkin rushed back to his car, returned with his plasmascope, which is an invention of his own that measured electrical energy in the area. "The readings are off the chart," Bert said. He began taking photographs, lots of them. The mausoleum, by the way, was built by Mortimer Grimley, who owned the woolen mills in Sawyer back during the Civil War. Mortimer had a niece. Her name was Dolores. She lived with the family. She had a club foot, and she was a recluse. She stayed in an upstairs bedroom most of her life. So the tracks in the snow were, of course, made by the ghosts of Mortimer and Dolores. What else could it be? Well, the story was the lead on the Channel 9 news that night, and it was the lead in the Manchester Union Leader. Even the Boston television stations came to interview Bert. And you can imagine the activity on the internet. Bert Flodkin is now an international celebrity. But you know, no one ever found out why the ghosts came out on Halloween, or why they made tracks in the snow, or for that matter, where they went. Well, a few months afterwards, Binky and Fern were sitting at their kitchen table. "Okay, Binky," Fern said, "time to come straight with me. This caper has your fingerprints all over it. Fess up." "Well," Binky said, "last July I was out in the tool shop fixing some rake and hoe handles with Gorilla Glue, and I was impressed by how well the stuff held. Anyhow, my winter work boots were there, and they were coming apart at the sole, and there was another pair there as well. And so I took the older pair of boots and cut the soles right off them, and I went to glue the soles from the old boots on the other pair. But something got into me, and I thought, I wonder. And I glued the soles on backwards, so the heel was under the toe of the boot. So if you walked in the snow, the tracks would be backward. See, I didn't know when I might play the trick, but I was prepared. And geez, we had snow on Halloween, and I thought, perfect. So I drove over to the cemetery and walked to the tomb in the backwards shoes. And then I took them off, and I walked back to the truck in my stocking feet. And I dragged my left foot a little so people would think Dolores had made the tracks, and then I called Bert Floodkin. Thought it might make him the happiest man in the world. And you know, it has. Oh, you're still there. You survived another of Fritz Weatherby's haunted New Hampshire shows. Well, good for you. Tales of canned grandmother meat and a tiny death in a miniature diorama and an escape from the crypt. Disgusting, I know. But what fun. Pleasant dreams.